Welcome to PPL Live, Pantheon Prestige League Live. Gino the Gent here with you, ready to recap our Week 12 Turkey Tussles and get us all set up for Week 13 and the home stretch as the regular season comes to its conclusion this week. But before we get into Week 13 action, let's talk about Week 12, recap those scores, and get you guys all up to date. Starting with squad underestimated behind Christian McCaffrey's 40-point effort, defeating the Argonauts, making a huge statement in the Alpha Conference and in the PPL as they've set themselves up for a deep Final Four run. Patty's Twins falls to the Baby Gas team, 133-95. The Mean Machine wins again as they clinch the Alpha Conference Championship, 136-98. The Gaff Attack scores an impressive 179 without Todd Gurley to defeat the United Players, the Destroyers 99, and appease the gods. Gets a little bit of momentum going, better late than never, as they defeat the Skulls 136-115. All right, here we are, Week 13, ready to get it set up. But before we get into that, let's congratulate the Leave No Doubt Player of the Week, Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is the first player to be named the Leave No Doubt Player of the Week more than once this season. So congratulations to Christian McCaffrey as he led squad underestimated against their hated rivals, the Argonauts, beating them in the Turkey Tussle in their big rivalry matchup. Segueing us into our first matchup, we have squad underestimated taking on only for the boss. Alrighty, ladies and gents, here we go. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, who will be the apple of Kirk Cousins' eye. That will probably play a huge part in this matchup based on what we're looking at here. On squad underestimated side, we talked about Christian McCaffrey. He's continuing to just be a monster among men. I mean, he started off, I believe one drive, and squad underestimated actually pointed it out, that he accounted for every drive, including the touchdown on one of the drives, including a 60-yard run. It just seemed like every time Christian got the ball, he was highly impressive. And, I mean, I always liked the kid coming out of Stanford. I thought he had some great speed. But he's really turning himself into a fine player, and he's probably going to make a huge impact in this year's Final Four. Saquon Barkley had 30 points in the first half of that matchup last week against the Argonauts. For whatever reason, he only scored about 2 points in the second half, and that has a lot to do with the New York Giants' dysfunction. They don't seem to know what their identity is or who they want to be. To me, if you're at the point where you don't know how to get the ball to Odell Beckham Jr., you better turn into a good running team that throws well off of play action. The Giants just don't seem to know what they want to do with themselves. Obviously, I mentioned the Diggs and Thielen dynamic. Those two players are going to play a huge role in this matchup for a multitude of reasons. The biggest reasons being that on the boss's side, he's going to go with a lot of Chiefs. Now, he doesn't have the coach anymore, but he still has the defense. He still has Patrick Mahomes. He still has Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So he's got the big guns on the Kansas City Chiefs, and it still should help pay dividends for him on that end. Now, he didn't have a good showing last week against the Mean Machine. Josh Adams was a great pickup. I think that's a guy that only for the boss would like to continue to roll with, being that the guy is finally solidifying a place in that Eagles backfield. Looking over this matchup, squad underestimated did a pretty good job last week of putting up monster points. Of course, 70 of that 189 came from two players, from McCaffrey and Barkley. That being said, this is really just a tune-up for squad underestimated going into the playoffs, and I really like what they're doing this week, and they really showed what they're capable of last week. I've got squad underestimated defeating only for the boss in this matchup, 130-122. I think the boss keeps it close with the Chiefs, but squad underestimated ends up taking the W. Moving on to our next matchup in the PPL, we have the United Play as the Destroyers taking on the Skulls. All right, this one's in reach for the Skulls. The Skulls have a good shot of scoring the win here. The United Play as the Destroyers made some noise throughout interconference warfare and early in the season. But through the late stretch, they weren't able to hold on, and they've obviously been eliminated from playoff contention. Brady and White continue to be a great 1-2 punch dynamic now. White wasn't a big-time part of the passing game for the first time. He only had 1 catch for 5 yards, which is almost insane when you think about his high usage in the passing game. But he did have 9 carries for 73 yards, so he still was able to find some production for the United players. Now, Tom Brady, he's settling into a role where he's just going to be serviceable, not spectacular. He just needs to be good enough for the Patriots to win. They're not trying to win him league MVP, so his point total is going to continue at a steady pace. Now, on the Skull side, I love the Calvin Ridley play, and it paid off for him. Ridley's going to probably be a guy that they should probably look at keeping around, because he's obviously emerging as the number 2 threat in that passing game, which is very high octane. I'm looking at the Edwards pickup, with the Gus Edwards pickup. He's a guy that was a nice little revelation thanks to the Lamar Jackson situation. He's great in the read option game, and I think that's a great play for the Skulls. This guy was undrafted, so Gus Edwards is taking the ball and running with it, literally. Props to him. Looking over the matchup, I do like some of the bench players the Skulls have. I like Austin Eckler, and I like Kenyon Drake. I think both of those guys, could arguably be starters for the Skulls this week. And then obviously they'll decide between Watson and Winston. Winston's been playing well because his job's on the line. That being said, I'm gonna call it. I got the Skulls winning this matchup 115 to 109. I don't know if the United players, have the interest or the firepower to win this matchup. Alrighty, moving on to our next matchup in the PPL. We have the Argonauts taking on the Baby Gas team. Alrighty, 2 weeks ago, the Argonauts looked like they were in position to win the Alpha Conference title. Now they will settle in as the number 4 seed, so they're the lowest seeded team in the playoffs, a position that they're not very, very used to. Now, they did make the trade for Drew Brees last week. While Brees had a 4-touchdown day, he only threw for about 170 yards, so it wasn't a huge production day for him, and it kind of fell to the wayside. Now, obviously, the Argonauts played squad underestimated, who had a huge week, and I mean, they just simply didn't have enough. Now, that doesn't mean that their production was bad. They put up a nice 138 and were able to keep it close up until the end, but they've got to figure out the coaching positions. Now, they do get good matchups again this week going into this one. Obviously, James Conner struggled against the Denver run defense, but the Chargers run defense isn't as great. And then you've got the rogues gallery of stars that the Argonauts have on their side, whether that be Jared Goff, Ezekiel Elliott, or Devontae Adams. Now, on the Baby Gas team side, Melvin Gordon is out. He's out, and that's why Austin Eckler is going to be such a good play for the Skulls. Melvin Gordon has been the best player on the BGT week in and week out. He's been extremely consistent, and he's the number 4 running back in the game. So this isn't a guy that's going to be easily replaced. Obviously, the BGT won't be in the playoffs, so it's not a major consequence that Gordon is going down. But if we're talking for the sake of this matchup, it should be a huge blow. Now, they couldn't get Dalvin Cook and Robert Woods back into the lineup. That'll help them big time, just trying to score a season-ending upset, over a Alpha Conference rival. That being said, I just don't see it. I think the Argonauts have good matchups this week. They're going to probably want to get back on track going into the playoffs, and I got the Argonauts winning this. I got the Argonauts winning this matchup 135 to 117. Alrighty. Moving on to our next matchup in the PPL, we have a blood feud in the Omega Conference, an old championship Omega rivalry, as these two teams were the only teams from the same conference to play in the Pantheon Cup, as Patty's Twins takes on Appease the Gods. Alrighty, both of these teams have obviously seen greater days as they squared off in Pantheon Cup 7. And have squared off in different playoff matchups in Omega Conference Championship games. Now, Aaron Rodgers just simply has not had the year that we've expected from him. We all know that. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the lack of confidence he has in his receivers. And I think he has a lack of confidence in himself a little bit at this point in the season. I mean, he's throwing balls in the dirt. He doesn't seem as engaged in the game. And I think a part of it really has to do with the fact that Jordy Nelson was let go by the Packers. when you take a guy's favorite receiver away, it really, you know, it can really have an adverse effect just based on the fact that he doesn't go into every snap knowing that he has someone that he can rely on. Although Devontae Adams has shown to be that guy at times, his rapport with Nelson was much better than it is with Adams. Now, David Johnson gets the Packers' run defense to go against. The Packers' defense has been a joke for the most part this year. They haven't given them enough support, and that's part of the reason why Rodgers has had a struggle. So I expect David Johnson to do big things there. Looking at this matchup, I mean, they've got great players on both sides. Both teams are projected well over 120 points, so it's kind of weird to see, you know, both of these teams, one sitting at 5 wins, one sitting at 4 wins, when these teams are, you know, Omega Conference royalty. Now, Lamar Jackson is continuing to show his running chops, although I am a little concerned about his ability to throw the football. He did have a nice 50-yard pass play that was called back, but he put a nice one on the money to Brown. But he needs to do more of that. I want to see more passing out of Mr. Jackson. Now, Gronk finally made an appearance and got back in the end zone. And it looks like ATG is going to go with Corey Davis. Corey Davis is a guy I really like, and he's really starting to emerge, especially if you watch that last Monday Night Football game. Davis is a pretty good player, and I think that he's got a lot of potential moving forward. Joe Mixon and Lamar Miller obviously round out the backfield for ATG. And this matchup is very, very even. I know ATG wants this one, and I know the Twins want this one. And it's going to come down to a pretty close one, but I'm going to call it. I think ATG closes the season strong. I got to appease the gods. Beating Patty's Twins 128 to 121. I think it's close, and they give us a nice little show to close out their seasons. Segueing us into the prestige matchup of the week. I don't think we've had a bigger prestige matchup of the week in PPL history as champions collide, as the Gaff Attack of the Omega Conference, the champions of Omega, take on the new Alpha Conference champions, the Mean Machine. Alrighty, these two teams sit atop their conferences and basically are playing for the Imperial Throne. Yes, we have an Imperial Throne game of the year, or the Imperial Throne Bowl, as we'll call it this year. As the winner of this matchup will go in as the number 1 seed, and will face the Argonauts. The loser will play Squad Underestimated, as they're locked in as the 3 seed. So it looks like the winner will get the Argo, the loser gets Squad Underestimated. These are the best records ever in PPL history to face each other. There's never been multiple 10-win teams. Now, there's been a few years the Argonauts were a 10-win team, and I believe one year ATG was a 10-win team, but they didn't play each other. So this matchup is basically the most wins in PPL history against each other. This is basically Rams Chiefs. I mean, I think that we're going to get the same kind of fireworks we got in that game a few weeks ago. I'm looking at Juju Smith-Schuster. That 97-yard touchdown that man caught was amazing. He's a son of Troy. I know everybody thinks that it's AB, but AB can't catch the ball and run for this man. Juju's doing all of that, and you know, he's an LA kid, and he's representing you know, Los Angeles proudly, and he's probably going to try to represent Los Angeles proudly against the Chargers on Sunday night. I really like Juju in that matchup. I'm loving Sony Michel. I thought that was a great draft pick by the Gaff, and I think that he's going to continue to do well. The Dak Prescott pickup was smart, being that they missed out on the Drew Brees sweepstakes. I'm guessing that that could be a pretty good pickup just based on the fact that the Cowboys have a great schedule down the stretch, and that may help the Gaff clinch the Pantheon Cup. Now, on the Machine side, Andrew Luck, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. I mean, like I said, these two teams are so stacked that it's almost redundant to make a pick, because either team should be able to win this matchup. Obviously, Thomas, Kamara, and Cooper are all going to come out for the Machine early. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how that matchup unfolds, because that matchup is going to decide this one. And I think that matchup may be a little low scoring than some may expect. Now, Odell does get the Chicago defense, who's been one of the better defenses in the league. And this is just a very, very close one. I'm excited to see who wins it. Obviously, they'll play the Argonauts in the first round, the winner. And I'm going to call it. I've got the Gaff Attack winning this matchup and going in as the number 1 seed, 130 to 127. Alrighty, PPLers, have a good one. Stay safe, and may the odds be ever in your favor.